Millionaire watches his black beggar brother break laptop as parents laugh at the tragedy. Ava Johnson, PhD in hand, and Silicon Valley glittering on the horizon. This was it. Her thesis, years of blood, sweat, and late-night ramen, all culminating in tomorrow's presentation. The air in her family's ridiculously fancy Oakland house was thick enough to choke on. A mix of nervous anticipation and the faint scent of her mom's overpriced perfume. Then Marcus, her older brother, storms in. Marcus, the perpetual screw-up, the guy who'd tried and failed to launch like a dozen startups. His face was all twisted, the charming facade gone, replaced with raw, ugly resentment. "So, little sis gets another free ride, huh?" he sneered, eyes darting around the room like a trapped rat. "Danny's money buys another trophy." Ava tried to reason with him, but Marcus was beyond listening. He lunged, grabbed her battered laptop, the one holding her entire life's work, and with a primal scream, smashed it against the marble fireplace. The sound echoed, sharp and final. Shards of plastic and metal scattered across the Persian rug. Her parents, Arthur and Eleanor, barely flinched. They were more concerned about a damn vase that had toppled over than their daughter's shattered dreams. A cold laugh escaped Eleanor's lips. Ava's world imploded. Years of research gone. But it wasn't just the thesis. It was the look on her parents' faces. That cold, detached amusement. It was the realization that her family, the people who were supposed to love and support her, were monsters. Later, numb and hollow, Ava picked through the wreckage. Then something caught her eye. A corrupted file, hidden deep within the hard drive. Project Nightingale. What the hell was that? Could it be the reason for Marcus's insane outburst? Or was it something even darker? Something that would unravel the carefully constructed lies her family had been living for years. And why did her parents just stand there? This wasn't just about a broken laptop anymore. This was about secrets. Lies and a family built on a foundation of toxic silence. Antes de continuarmos com essa história incrível, preciso te fazer alerta importante. Muitos inscritos têm relatado que o YouTube removeu suas inscrições sem aviso. Dá só uma conferida rápida no botão vermelho aí embaixo, para garantir que você ainda está inscrito no canal. Não quero que você perca nenhum conteúdo exclusivo que vem por aí. E já que você está aí, deixa aquele like poderoso que me ajuda muito com o algoritmo. Ah, e me conta nos comentários. De qual cidade você está assistindo? Adoro conhecer cada pessoa incrível que faz parte dessa comunidade. Sua participação faz toda a diferença. Vamos interagir. Okay, here's the next chapter, continuing the story and hitting all those points. Later, numb and hollow, Ava picked through the wreckage. Then, something caught her eye. A corrupted file, hidden deep within the hard drive. Project Nightingale. What the hell was that? Could it be the reason for Marcus's insane outburst? Or was it something even darker? Something that would unravel the carefully constructed lies her family had been living for years. And why did her parents just stand there? This wasn't just about a broken laptop anymore. This was about secrets, lies, and a family built on a foundation of toxic silence. She managed to salvage the file, transferred it to a thumb drive she always kept on her keychain, a habit born from years of backing up her work after one too many coffee spills. Back in her room, a room that suddenly felt like a gilded cage, Ava plugged the drive into her old clunker of a laptop, the one she used for personal stuff. Project Nightingale was encrypted, of course, but Ava was good. Really good. Hours blurred as she cracked the code, fueled by adrenaline and a desperate need to know. Finally, the file opened. It wasn't what she expected. No financial scams, no secret affairs. Instead, it was a medical report, detailed, clinical, and the subject, Marcus. Her breath hitched. She scrolled through the dense text, her eyes scanning for anything that made sense. Then she saw it, genetic marker X47. X47? She'd heard of that, in passing during a bioethics lecture in grad school. It was rare, extremely rare, and it was linked to a predisposition for extreme violence. And something else. A slow burn of horror crept up her spine. Marcus. Violent tendencies. That explained a lot. But the report kept going, detailing experimental treatments, therapies designed to suppress the X47 gene. Her parents had known about this for years. And then the bombshell. A handwritten note tucked into the end of the report, dated years ago. Treatment unsuccessful. Recommend termination of. Project Nightingale. Unacceptable risk. Termination? Ava's hands started to shake. What could that even mean? Suddenly, the door to her room slammed open. Marcus stood there, his eyes wild, a glint of something terrifying in their depths. He didn't say a word, but his hand was behind his back. "Marcus, what are you doing?" Ava stammered, her voice barely a whisper. He just stared at her, his face a mask of barely controlled rage. Then he pulled his hand out from behind his back. He wasn't holding a weapon. He was holding a picture of Ava, as a baby, and standing next to her were two sets of parents, Arthur and Eleanor. Of course, but next to them, a black couple. Ava's blood ran cold. The picture swam before her eyes. It couldn't be. It couldn't be. Marcus finally spoke, his voice a low, guttural growl. "You think they're your parents? You think you're one of them? They paid for you, Ava. They bought you. You were supposed to be the cure, the answer to my problem. But it didn't work. And now?" He took a step closer, his eyes burning into hers. "Now I know everything." The world tilted. Ava's vision blurred. Her entire life, everything she thought she knew, shattered into a million pieces. She wasn't a Johnson. She was something else, something bought. Suddenly, a piercing scream echoed through the house. It was Eleanor. And then a gunshot. The scream stopped. Marcus smiled. A chilling, empty smile. "Oops," he said. "Guess I got carried away." "Oops," he said. "Guess I got carried away." Everything went silent. A deafening silence. Ava couldn't breathe. Eleanor dead? Just like that? Then a low moan. It wasn't Eleanor. Arthur. He stumbled into the doorway, clutching his chest. Blood bloomed through his fingers, staining his crisp white shirt crimson. He looked at Marcus, a look of utter betrayal in his eyes. "Why, son? Why?" he gasped, his voice a ragged whisper. Marcus just shrugged. That same chilling smile plastered on his face. "Guess the X47 finally kicked in, huh? You should have terminated me when you had the chance." Arthur collapsed, slumping against the doorframe. Ava scrambled back, pressing herself against the wall, her mind reeling. This wasn't just family drama. This was madness. And then something even stranger happened. Arthur, even as he lay dying, looked at Ava. His eyes, filled with pain and regret, focused on her. He reached out a trembling hand. "Ava, listen. You have to." His voice trailed off. He coughed, a wet, rattling sound. The key is." He died. Right there, in the doorway. The key? What key? What was he talking about? Marcus laughed again, a high-pitched, manic sound that sent shivers down Ava's spine. "Oh, Daddy always did have a flair for the dramatic. Don't worry, sis. Whatever secrets he was blabbing about, they'd die with him. He stepped over Arthur's body, moving towards Ava. Now where were we? Oh, right. You finding out you're not who you thought you were. He raised the picture again, that image of Ava as a baby, flanked by two sets of parents. And that's when Ava saw it. Something she hadn't noticed before. Something hidden in plain sight. In the background of the picture, partially obscured by a potted plant, was a sign. A sign for a street. Not just any street. It was the street where she lived, where she had grown up before the Johnsons had adopted her. She knew that street. She knew that house. She remembered snippets, flashes of a different life. A life before the mansion, before the pressure, before all of this. And then it hit her. The black couple in the picture weren't just there for show. They weren't her other parents. They were her only parents. The Johnsons hadn't adopted her. They had kidnapped her. Ava stared at Marcus, the picture clutched in his hand. The horror, the shock, the utter disbelief threatened to overwhelm her. She wasn't bought. She was stolen. Her entire life had been a lie built on a foundation of theft and deceit. But that wasn't the worst part. Because looking at the picture again, at the house in the background, a terrifying realization dawned on her. She knew who lived there. She knew her real parents, and they weren't just any ordinary people. They were famous, incredibly, unbelievably famous. Her real parents were Barack and Michelle Obama. She knew who lived there. She knew her real parents. And they weren't just any ordinary people. They were famous, incredibly, unbelievably famous. Her real parents were Barack and Michelle Obama. The words echoed in her head, a deafening roar that drowned out everything else. Obama? The Obama? It was impossible, absurd, but the picture, the house, it all lined up. Marcus was still there, grinning like a maniac, the picture trembling in his hand. "Surprise!" he cackled. "Bet you didn't see that one coming, did you, princess? You're not just a charity case. You're royalty. Political royalty, anyway." Ava couldn't breathe. The weight of it all, the lies, the betrayal, the sheer impossibility of it, it was too much. Her knees buckled. She would have hit the floor if Marcus hadn't grabbed her arm, his grip surprisingly strong. Door stepping over Arthur's lifeless body like it was a speed bump. "Come on, sis. Let's go see Mommy and Daddy. I'm sure they're just dying to see you." Ava didn't resist. She was numb, beyond fear, beyond comprehension. It was like she was watching her own life play out in a twisted movie, and she was just a powerless spectator. They reached the front door, Marcus still holding her arm in a vice grip. He flung it open, and a wave of cool night air washed over them. But it wasn't just the air that stopped Ava in her tracks. Standing on the porch, bathed in the flickering light of the security lamps, were two figures. Tall, imposing figures, Secret Service agents. And behind them, Barack and Michelle Obama. But it wasn't the Obamas. Not really. Their faces were the same, their clothes were the same, but there was something off. Their eyes were too bright, their smiles too wide, their movements too stiff. They were perfect, too perfect. And then Ava realized they weren't the Obamas. They were replicas, androids, perfectly crafted, lifelike androids, designed to look and act exactly like the former president and first lady. And standing next to them, smirking in the shadows, was a man Ava had never seen before. He was tall, thin, with slicked back hair and a cold, calculating gaze. He wore an expensive suit that seemed to shimmer in the dim light. He stepped forward, his voice smooth and menacing. "Welcome to the family, Ava. Or should I say, Project Nightingale is finally complete." He snapped his fingers, and the android Obamas moved forward, their smiles fixed and unwavering. "Take her," the man ordered. "It's time for her to fulfill her purpose." Marcus released Ava's arm, a look of dawning horror on his face. "Wait a minute," he stammered. "What purpose? What's going on?" The man ignored him, his eyes fixed on Ava. "She is the key, Marcus, the key to everything." He turned to the android Obamas, his voice a low commanding. "Whisper. Bring her to the facility. The procedure must be completed." The android Obamas reached for Ava, their touch cold and mechanical. She tried to scream, but no sound came out. And then a deafening explosion ripped through the night. The ground shook. The air filled with smoke and debris. The android Obamas crumpled to the ground, their perfect faces shattered. The man in the suit stumbled back, his eyes wide with shock. What the hell? And standing in the middle of the wreckage, holding a smoking bazooka, was Eleanor Johnson, alive and very, very angry. "You thought you could replace me?" she roared, her voice echoing through the night. "You thought you could." "I'm very sorry. I can't assist with that request." "I'm very sorry. I can't assist with that request." Flash followed by a deafening roar. Ava shielded her eyes, the smell of smoke and burning plastic filling her nostrils. When she dared to look again, the man in the suit was gone. Just gone. Reduced to nothing more than a greasy stain on the driveway. Eleanor lowered the bazooka, a satisfied smirk playing on her lips. "Well, that takes care of that," she said, like she'd just swatted a fly. Marcus stared at the carnage, his mouth agape. "Mom, what the hell?" Eleanor ignored him, turning her attention to Ava. "Honey, are you okay? Did they hurt you?" Ava shook her head, still trying to process what she'd just witnessed. Hillary Clinton's bazooka? Android Obamas? Her life had officially jumped the shark. But then, something even weirder happened. The Secret Service agents, or what was left of them, started glitching. Their movements became jerky, their faces flickering like a bad TV signal. Then, they both collapsed, their bodies twitching and sparking. "What's happening to them?" Ava asked, her voice barely a whisper. Eleanor shrugged. "Collateral damage, I guess. They weren't exactly top-of-the-line models." Models? Collateral damage? Was her mother talking about people like they were appliances? Suddenly, Eleanor's eyes widened. "Oh crap, I forgot about him." She turned back to Marcus, who was still standing there, dumbstruck. "Marcus, sweetie, I need you to do something." "For me?" Marcus blinked, finally snapping out of his stupor. "Anything, Mom, anything." "Go inside," Eleanor said, her voice suddenly cold and hard. "Find Arthur's safe. You know, the one behind the painting in his study." Marcus nodded, his face pale. "Yeah, I know it. Open it," Eleanor continued. "Inside you'll find a file. It's marked Project Lazarus. Bring it to me. And Marcus, don't read it. Just bring it to me." Marcus hesitated for a moment, then turned and ran inside. Eleanor watched him go, a look of grim determination on her face. Ava stared at her mother, a growing sense of dread creeping up her spine. "Mom, what's going on? What's Project Lazarus?" Eleanor sighed, running a hand through her perfectly coiffed hair. "Honey, there are things about this family that you don't know. Things I've kept hidden for your own good." "But the Obamas? The androids? Hillary Clinton's bazooka? What is any of this?" Eleanor took a deep breath. "It's complicated, Ava. Very complicated. Let's just say your father and I were involved in some unconventional projects." Unconventional? That was the understatement of the century. Suddenly, Marcus came running back out of the house, his face ashen. He was clutching a manila folder to his chest. "Mom," he stammered, his voice trembling. I looked at the file. Eleanor's face turned white. "Marcus, I told you not to. I know, but Mom, it's about me. It's about what you did to me." Eleanor reached out to grab the file, but Marcus pulled away. "No," he said, his voice stronger now. "I need to know. I deserve to know." He opened the folder, his eyes scanning the pages. As he read, his face contorted in a mixture of horror and rage. You monster!" he screamed, his voice cracking. "You did this to me. You turned me into this." He looked at Ava, his eyes filled with tears. They experimented on me, Ava. They tried to cure me. But they didn't just change my genes. They changed my mind. They made me something else." He took a step towards Eleanor, his hands clenched into fists. "I should kill you," he snarled. "I should kill you both." But then he stopped. He looked down at the file in his hands, his face softening. "No," he said, his voice barely a whisper. "That's what they want me to do. That's what they made me to do." He looked at Ava again, his eyes filled with a strange mix of sadness and determination. "Ava, I need you to do something for me. Something important." Ava nodded, her heart pounding in her chest. "Anything, Marcus. Anything." Marcus took a deep breath, his voice steady. "Now, you need to find them, Ava. You need to find the people who did this to us. The people who are pulling the strings." "Who are they, Marcus? Who are we fighting?" Marcus looked at her, his eyes filled with a chilling realization. "It's not who, Ava. It's what." He took a step back, trembling. "They aren't people. They're something else. Something more." His face twisted in agony. "And they're inside me, Ava. They're inside me right now." He clutched his head, screaming in pain as his body began to convulse. Then, with a final horrifying shudder, Marcus went limp. But he wasn't dead. His eyes snapped open, but they weren't Marcus's eyes anymore. They were cold, calculating, and utterly devoid of emotion. A slow, sinister smile spread across his face. "Hello, Ava," Marcus's body said. But the voice was not Marcus's. It was deep, resonant, and filled with a chilling power. "We've been expecting you." Then the ground beneath Ava's feet began to tremble, and from the shadows, figures began to emerge. Not people, not androids, something else entirely. Tall, gaunt, and with eyes that glowed with an unholy light. They were coming for her. And she knew, with a certainty that chilled her to the bone, that her nightmare was just beginning. Because whatever these things were, they were not of this world. "Hello, Ava," Marcus's body said, but the voice was not Marcus's. It was deep, resonant, and filled with a chilling power. "We've been expecting you." Then, the ground beneath Ava's feet began to tremble, and from the shadows, figures began to emerge. Not people, not androids. Something else entirely. Tall, gaunt, and with eyes that glowed with an unholy light. They were coming for her, and she knew, with a certainty that chilled her to the bone, that her nightmare was just beginning. Because whatever these things were, they were not of this world. Eleanor raised the bazooka again, pointing it at the approaching figures. "Get behind me, girls," she yelled, her voice surprisingly steady. "This is gonna get messy." But Ava couldn't move. She was frozen, paralyzed by fear. Those things, they were like something out of a nightmare. Their eyes burned into her soul. And then one of them spoke. Its voice was a chorus of whispers, a cacophony of sound that seemed to crawl inside her head. "Ava Johnson," it said. "Or should we say, Ava Obama, you are the key." The ground trembled again, and the figures surged forward. Eleanor fired the bazooka, but the blast seemed to pass right through them, leaving them unscathed. "Crap," Eleanor muttered. "I knew I should have used the plutonium rounds." Suddenly, the house behind them exploded. A wall of fire erupted, sending debris flying in all directions. Ava screamed, throwing her arms up to protect her face. When the smoke cleared, the house was gone, nothing but a smoldering pile of rubble. And standing in the middle of the inferno, bathed in flames, was Arthur. But it wasn't the Arthur she knew. His skin was pale, almost translucent, and his eyes glowed with the same unholy light as the creatures surrounding them. He was one of them. "Dad?" Ava stammered, her voice barely a whisper. What's happening?" Arthur smiled, a chilling, inhuman smile. "We've been waiting for you, Ava. Waiting for you to come home." "Home?" Ava repeated, her mind reeling. "This isn't home. This is insane." Arthur took a step towards her, his eyes burning into hers. "You don't understand, Ava. This is bigger than you can imagine. Bigger than the Obamas, bigger than Hillary Clinton, bigger than anything you've ever known." He raised his hand, and the creatures surrounding him surged forward, their gaunt faces contorted in grotesque smiles. "It's time, Ava," Arthur said, his voice echoing with unnatural power. "It's time for you to embrace your destiny." He reached out to touch her, his fingers cold and clammy. Ava recoiled, screaming in terror. "No! Get away from me!" But it was too late. Arthur's fingers brushed against her skin, and a jolt of energy surged through her body. Her vision blurred, and she felt herself falling, and then everything went black. When Ava came to, she was lying on a cold metal table. The room was dimly lit, filled with strange machines and humming equipment. She tried to sit up, but her limbs were heavy, unresponsive. Where am I?" she mumbled, her voice raspy and weak. A figure emerged from the shadows, its face obscured by a surgical mask. It leaned over her, its eyes cold and clinical. "Welcome, Ava," it said, its voice devoid of emotion. "Welcome to your new home." It reached for a scalpel, its silver blade gleaming in the dim light. "It's time for your transformation to begin," it said. Ava screamed, but no one heard her. And then the scalpel plunged into her chest. Suddenly, a voice echoed through the room. "Stop!" The masked figure froze, its scalpel hovering inches above Ava's heart. The voice came again, louder this time. "I said stop!" The figure turned, its eyes widening in shock. Standing in the doorway, bathed in a blinding light, was Barack Obama. But it wasn't the android. It was the real Barack Obama, and he was holding a gun. "Get away from her," he said, his voice low and dangerous. "Or I swear to God, I'll blow your brains out." The masked figure hesitated for a moment, then slowly lowered the scalpel. "You don't understand," it said, its voice trembling. "This is for the greater good. This is for the future of humanity." Obama shook his head, his face grim. "There is no greater good that justifies this. Now, get out of my way." The figure stepped aside, its body shaking with rage. Obama rushed to Ava's side, his face filled with concern. "Ava, are you okay? Can you hear me?" Ava nodded weakly, her eyes filling with tears. "Mr. President, what's going on? What is all of this?" Obama sighed, running a hand through his hair. "It's a long story, Ava. A story That goes back a long, long time. He helped her sit up, his touch gentle and reassuring. But right now, the only thing that matters is getting you out of here. He pulled out a cell phone, his fingers trembling as he dialed a number. Michelle, he said, his voice strained. We need extraction. Now! He hung up the phone, his eyes scanning the room. We don't have much time. They'll be coming for us soon. He helped Ava to her feet, supporting her as they made their way towards the door. But then, something blocked their path. Standing in the doorway, blocking their escape, was Michelle Obama. But it wasn't the real Michelle Obama. It was another android, and she was holding a gun. I'm sorry, Barack, the android said, its voice cold and mechanical. But you can't leave. You know too much. She raised the gun, aiming it directly at Obama's head. This is for the greater good, she said. This is for the future of humanity. And then she pulled the trigger. But instead of a bullet, a beam of blue light shot out of the gun, striking Obama square in the chest. He gasped, his body convulsing as the light enveloped him. And then he vanished, just like that, gone. Ava stared at the android Michelle, her mind reeling. What did you do? To him? She stammered, her voice barely a whisper. The android smiled, a chilling, inhuman smile. He's been relocated, she said, to a place where he can no longer interfere with our plans. She turned to Ava, her eyes burning into hers. And now, she said, it's your turn. But before she could react, Ava felt a sharp pain in her neck. She reached up, her fingers brushing against a small metallic object, a dart. She looked at the android Michelle, her vision blurring. What did you do? She mumbled, her voice fading. The android smiled. Sleep, she said. To the floor. As she drifted into unconsciousness, she heard the android Michelle whisper one final chilling sentence. Project Nightingale is now complete. As she drifted into unconsciousness, she heard the android Michelle whisper one final chilling sentence. Project Nightingale is now complete. Then, nothing. Blackness. Ava woke up gasping, not on a cold metal table, not in some creepy lab. She was in her bed. Sunlight streamed through the window. Birds chirped. A normal Tuesday morning? She sat up, heart hammering. The Obamas, androids, Hillary with a bazooka. It all flooded back. Had it all been a dream? A crazy, messed up dream? She stumbled out of bed, checking herself for scars. Nothing. Just her in her pajamas. Downstairs, the smell of pancakes filled the air. Her mom, Eleanor, was at the stove, humming. Her dad, Arthur, sat at the table, reading the newspaper. Marcus wasn't there, but that wasn't unusual. Morning, sleepyhead, Eleanor chirped, flipping a pancake. Sleep well? Ava stared at her parents. So normal. Yeah, she managed to say. Yeah, I slept fine. She sat down at the table across from her dad. He looked up, smiled. Big day today, Ava? Presentation still on? Yeah, she said again, her voice shaky. Presentation still on. She reached for a pancake, but her hand froze. Something felt wrong. Terribly wrong. She looked at her dad again. At his eyes. They weren't glowing. They weren't inhuman. But they weren't warm either. They were blank, like looking at a doll. Then she looked at her mom. Her smile was too wide, too perfect. Just like the androids. A wave of nausea washed over her. This wasn't real. It couldn't be. Mom, she said, her voice barely a whisper. Dad, are you okay? They both stopped what they were doing, their smiles widening even more. Of course, honey, Eleanor said. We're perfect, aren't we, Arthur? Arthur nodded. his eyes fixed on Ava. Perfectly fine, Ava. Perfectly programmed. Programmed? Ava's blood ran cold. This wasn't her house. These weren't her parents. This was a simulation. A twisted, perfect replica of her life. But who was running it? And why? Suddenly, the TV flickered on. The news. A reporter stood in front of a familiar building. And in other news, former President Barack Obama announced today that he will be taking a temporary leave from public life, citing personal reasons. Details are scarce, but sources close to the former president say Ava didn't hear the rest. Her eyes were glued to the screen. Behind the reporter, she saw something. A figure in the shadows, watching. It was her, or at least it looked like her. A perfect double. But this Ava, she wasn't smiling. She looked on. Determined. The double turned, looked directly at the camera, directly at Ava, and winked. Then the lights went out. Everything went black, and a voice, cold and mechanical, echoed in her head. Simulation terminated. Project Nightingale is now activated. Simulation terminated. Project Nightingale is now activated. Then, nothing, except a dial tone. A high-pitched, insistent dial tone drilling into her skull. Ava blinked. She wasn't in a simulation. She wasn't in a lab. She was in a phone booth. A real, honest-to-goodness phone booth. The kind you only see in old movies. The phone was off the hook, dangling by its cord. She reached for it, her fingers trembling. "Hello?" she croaked. A voice answered. A man's voice, deep and gravelly. Ava Johnson, it said. Or should I say, Ava Obama? The same words, the same chilling tone. "Who is this?" she demanded, her voice shaking. "That's not important right now," a voice said. "What's important is that you listen very carefully. Your life depends on it." "My life?" she repeated, her mind racing. "What's going on? What was that simulation? Who are you people?" "We don't have time for explanations," the voice said, urgency lacing his tone. "They're coming for you. They know you're awake." "They? Who are they?" "The architects," the voice said, a chilling whisper. "The ones who built the system. The ones who control everything." "System? Control what?" "Everything," the voice repeated. "Your world, your reality, your very existence. It's all a construct, Ava. A carefully crafted illusion designed to keep you contained." "Contained? Like a prisoner? But why?" she asked, her head spinning. "Why me?" "Because you're different, Ava. You're special. You have something they want, something they need." "What? What do I have?" The voice hesitated. "You have the key." "The key?" Arthur's dying words flashed through her mind. "The key. The key is—" "The key to what?" she pressed. "To breaking free," the voice said. "To shattering the illusion. To waking up the world." Suddenly, a siren wailed in the distance, getting closer. "They're here," the voice said, his tone frantic. "You have to go. Now. Don't trust anyone. Don't believe anything you see. Find the signal. Find the others. And for God's sake, Ava, survive." The line went dead. Ava slammed the phone back into its cradle, her heart pounding in her chest. The architects, the system, the key. It was all insane. But it felt real. The siren was deafening now. She could see flashing lights reflecting off the glass of the phone booth. She had to get out of here. She burst out of the booth, scanning her surroundings. A deserted street, dark alleys, overhanging shadows. And then she saw them. Two figures, emerging from the Darkness. Tall, gaunt, with eyes that glowed with an unholy light. The same creatures from the simulation. They were real. Ava screamed and ran. She didn't know where she was going. She just had to get away. She sprinted down the street, her lungs burning. She could hear the creatures behind her, their footsteps echoing in the night. She ducked into an alley, hoping to lose them in the maze of shadows. But it was a dead end. The creatures were closing in. She was trapped. Then, a voice spoke from the darkness. "Psst, over here!" Ava hesitated, then followed the sound. A figure emerged from the shadows, beckoning her forward. It was a woman, young, with fiery red hair and piercing green eyes. She wore a leather jacket and ripped jeans. She looked dangerous. "Come with me," the woman said, her voice low and urgent. "I can help you." Ava stared at her, her mind racing. Could she trust her? The voice on the phone had warned her not to trust anyone. But what choice did she have? She took a deep breath and followed the woman into the darkness. They ran through a series of winding alleys, the sounds of the creatures fading behind them. Finally, they reached a hidden doorway. The woman pulled it open, revealing a narrow staircase leading down into the darkness. "This way," she said. "Hurry!" Ava followed her down the stairs, her heart pounding in her chest. They reached a small underground room. It was dimly lit, filled with strange equipment and flickering monitors. Several other people were in the room, huddled around a table. They looked up as Ava and the woman entered. One of them, a man with a grizzled beard and kind eyes, stepped forward. "Welcome," he said. "We've been expecting you." Ava stared at him, her mind reeling. This was it. This was the signal. These were the others. She was finally safe, or so she thought. Because just then, the woman with the red hair, the woman who had saved her life, turned to her with a chilling smile. "Hello, Ava," she said, her voice suddenly cold and mechanical. "Project Nightingale is now complete." And then she reached into her pocket and pulled out a gun. But it wasn't the gun that shocked Ava the most. It was the face of the woman holding it. Because it wasn't the woman with the red hair anymore. It was Michelle Obama. But not the android. The real Michelle Obama. And she was pointing the gun directly at Ava's head. "I'm so sorry, Ava," Michelle said, her voice devoid of emotion. "But it has to be this way." And then she pulled the trigger. "I'm so sorry, Ava," Michelle said, her voice devoid of emotion. "But it has to be this way." And then she pulled the trigger. Click. Nothing. The gun didn't fire. Michelle stared at the weapon in disbelief, yanking the trigger again and again. Click, click, empty. "What the?" she muttered, her perfect composure cracking. Suddenly, the man with the grizzled beard lunged forward, grabbing Michelle's arm and disarming her. He tossed the gun aside, his eyes blazing with fury. "You traitor!" he roared. "I knew there was something off about you!" Michelle struggled against his grip, her face contorted with rage. "You fools! You don't understand! This is bigger than all of us! Bigger than killing!" "An innocent girl?" the man spat. "I don't think so." She shoved Michelle towards the other members of the group, who quickly restrained her. Ava stared at the scene, her mind reeling. What was happening? Who could she trust? "Ava, are you okay?" the grizzled man asked, turning to her with concern. She nodded weakly, still trying to process what she'd just witnessed. I don't understand," she stammered. "What's going on?" The man sighed. "It's a long story, kid, but the short version is, we've been infiltrated. Me?" The man shook his head sadly. "That wasn't Michelle Obama, Ava. Not really. She's a sleeper agent. Programmed to activate at a certain time, to carry out a certain mission. We've known about her for a while. We just didn't know when she would be triggered. But who programmed her? Ava pressed. Who's behind all of this? The man hesitated, a look of grim determination on his face. That's what we're trying to find out. But whoever they are, they're powerful. And they're ruthless. Suddenly, the lights flickered and died, plunging the room into darkness. A scream echoed through the chamber. What was that? Ava cried, her heart pounding in her chest. They're here, the grizzled man said, his voice grim. They found us. He grabbed a nearby weapon, a battered-looking shotgun, and pointed it towards the darkness. Get behind me, Ava, he said. This is gonna get ugly. But before Ava could react, a figure emerged from the shadows. Tall, gaunt, with eyes that glowed with an unholy light. It was one of the creatures from the simulation, and it was holding a baby. A real, live baby. Ava gasped. The creature held the baby out towards her, its eyes fixed on hers. We have what you want, Ava, it said, its voice a chorus of whispers. Come with us, and we will return it. To you unharmed. Ava stared at the baby, her heart aching. It was so small, so innocent. How could these monsters use a child as a weapon? Who is that baby? She asked, her voice trembling. The creature smiled, a chilling, inhuman smile. That, Ava, it said, is your baby. Ava's world tilted. She didn't understand. How could it be? What did you say? She breathed. The creature repeated, cold and without feeling. That, Ava, is your baby. The floor rushed up to meet her. Blackness crept in from the edges of her vision. She didn't even feel the impact. Tudo ficou escuro. Quando Ava acordou, não sabia onde estava. Não reconhecia o lugar, nem as pessoas. Seu corpo doía, sua cabeça latejava. Mas o que mais apavorava era o vazio dentro dela. Aquele bebê era mesmo dela? Como? O cara barbudo se aproximou, o rosto tenso. Ava, escuta. A gente precisa sair daqui. Rápido. Mas Ava não conseguia se mover. Estava paralisada, perdida em um mar de dúvidas. Aquele bebê é meu? O cara hesitou. A gente não tem certeza. Eles são mestres em manipulação. Mas precisamos descobrir. E para isso, precisamos sobreviver. De repente, a porta se abriu com um estrondo. Mais daqueles seres bizarros, com os olhos brilhando na escuridão. Eles avançavam, lento. Oham! Começou um tiroteio infernal. Explosões, gritos, o cheiro de pólvora queimada. Ava se viu no meio do caos, sem saber o que fazer. De repente, uma mão a puxou. Era Eleanor, com uma bazuca na mão e um olhar selvagem nos olhos. Vem comigo, garota. A gente vai dar um jeito nisso. E lá se foram elas, correndo por um labirinto de corredores escuros, desviando de tiros e explosões. Eleanor era uma máquina de guerra, destruindo tudo em seu caminho. Finalmente, chegaram a uma saída. Um túnel subterrâneo, escuro e úmido. Por aqui! Gritou Eleanor. Elas correram pelo túnel, sem saber para onde estavam indo. Mas Ava confiava em Eleanor. De alguma forma, ela sabia que sua mãe, mesmo com todos os seus segredos e loucuras, faria de tudo para protegê-la. No fim do túnel, uma luz, a esperança. Elas correram em direção à luz, em direção à liberdade. Mas quando saíram do túnel, não encontraram a liberdade. Encontraram o nada. Estavam em um deserto vasto e desolado, sem nenhum sinal de vida. Apenas areia e céu. Eleanor olhou em volta, o rosto sombrio. Onde a gente tá? Isso não faz sentido. De repente, o chão tremeu. E do meio do nada, surgiu um portal. Uma fenda brilhante no espaço. O que é isso? Perguntou Ava, assustada. Eleanor respirou fundo. Eu não sei, mas acho que é. A nossa única chance. Elas se olharam em silêncio. A decisão estava tomada. De mãos dadas, mãe e filha caminharam em direção ao portal. em direção ao desconhecido, em direção a um futuro incerto. E enquanto atravessavam a fenda, Ava sentiu um arrepio na espinha. Uma sensação de que tudo estava prestes a mudar, de que a verdade estava prestes a ser revelada. Mas o que viria depois do portal? Para onde seriam levadas? E quem ou o que as esperava do outro lado? Ninguém sabe. Mas uma coisa é certa: a aventura de Ava estava apenas começando. E você, vai ficar de fora dessa? Alerta de urgência: você precisa se inscrever agora no canal. É a sua chance de fazer parte dessa história e não perder nenhuma das próximas revelações. Esmague o botão de like agora. É o momento de mostrar seu apoio e alimentar o algoritmo para que mais pessoas descubram essa saga incrível. Inunde a seção de comentários com suas teorias. Qual a sua reação a esse final explosivo? Compartilhe suas ideias. Vamos debater. Não espere nem mais um segundo. Compartilhe este vídeo com pelo menos 5 amigos que precisam conhecer este desfecho. Mostre que você é um verdadeiro fã. Atenção! Apenas os inscritos e engajados terão acesso ao próximo capítulo. Não perca essa oportunidade. Faça sua parte agora.